So, I think it's time. I think we need to discuss Kathleen Kennedy. Is she really gone? Now, late last night, I think it's Matthew Baloney, right? Am I wrong about this? I think it's Matt. Late last night on Puck, which is a it's not a Hollywood show. It's like a little journalistic outlet, but it's very reliable. I've purchased and read a lot of their stories over the past couple of years. Fascinating stuff. And last night they put out an exclusive. Okay, and the exclusive is that Kathleen Kennedy will step down. Okay, yeah, it's Matthew Baloney. I'll put it up here. This is the Puck News big story that broke. Okay? And here's the thing. He is saying that it's absolutely happening. It's happening. After years of speculation and polite urging from observers like me, Kathleen Kennedy has informed Disney, as well as friends and associates, that she will exit as Lucasfilm president by the end of the year. Per 3 sources, Disney and Kennedy's personal publicist declined to comment. Now, the thing is, man, Matthew Baloney is a very, very good journalist. He's saying in the opening paragraph that there are 3 different sources that are reporting this to him. I completely understand why people would be skeptical of this news. We have basically heard for years that Kathleen Kennedy's going to retire. All kinds of news, all kinds of updates, all kinds of stories, and yet she persists. She just keeps doing that job. This time is different for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Matt actually putting it out there as an exclusive, putting his ass on the line and actually reporting it. But on top of that, there's a lot of conversation with other insiders and scoopers out there online. So this is Andrew Salazar. Andrew Salazar is the co-owner and the managing editor of Discussing Film. Also, has other websites, et cetera, et cetera. This is what Andrew said yesterday. I've been glued to my laptop for the past hour, so I was a bit late posting this. But yeah, some of us had heard whispers of this since last year. Now, this part's really interesting. Her replacements are exactly who you think they are going to be, by the way. Now, before we get too ahead of ourselves and talk about Jon and Dave and holy shit, maybe we can actually get Star Wars back, let's acknowledge that insiders have been talking about this for a long time. I remember when Jeff Snyder was speaking about how she probably, I forget exactly the context of what Jeff was saying, but I remember he was talking about Celebration, Kathleen Kennedy potentially moving on, and he worded it in such a way where I was like, dude, she's probably going to retire at Celebration. That's probably like what the plan is, okay? And I remember this started to pick up a lot of buzz. A lot of people were talking about it. Andrew here is kind of implying that he heard things last year around that same time that were suggesting that this is actually real. In the Puck article, there's a lot of interesting things being mentioned, like they're selling apparently a house. They've sold a house already. They're selling a bunch of artwork from LA. Apparently friends and close associates have been hearing that Kathy's looking forward to working more with Frank Marshall, her husband. So there's essentially a ton of evidence that it's actually real this time and that Kathleen Kennedy will be retiring by the end of 2025. Again, totally acknowledge that we've been on this roller coaster ride for a long time. People are not sure. Is it real this time? Is it just like all the other times? I'm telling you right now, I feel like it's real this time. I feel like Baloney going out on a limb, posting the exclusive, creating an entire cycle of news. Fascinating, very ballsy, but he did it. He also really doesn't like Kathleen Kennedy. At this point, who does like Kathleen Kennedy, though? Let's be real. Andrew here talking about it. I find that fascinating. I think it's real, guys. I think she will be gone. Now, a couple other questions with regards to this. I think the main one is like, does this even really matter? Okay, so I had some conversation with some fans earlier today. I was talking to some people on the timeline. I saw, for instance, Eckhart's Ladder kind of suggesting that this doesn't even really matter. They will just put another stooge in there, like corporate stooge. And this is not happening because Disney is actually upset with Kathleen Kennedy, but instead it's happening because Kathleen Kennedy is old. And I think that's fair. Like, she's 72 years old. She's had a long career. Yeah, she probably wants to retire, but here's the thing. She's not really going to retire. She's actually going to go work with Frank Marshall and do some producing. She might even produce stuff for Disney. Like, think more Amy Pascal leaving Sony after the emails and less like George leaving and going to work on his museum, right? The point is, I think there are a lot of people in the fandom that are viewing this thing with Kathy as kind of a nothing burger. And essentially, they either feel that, number one, Disney is just happy with Star Wars, and so nothing's going to change. This is just because she's older, and so therefore, it's not really worth getting excited about, because it's not like Disney was like, yo, your shit is fucked up. You better get out of there because we need somebody else in there. And look, maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe maybe that is fair. I think that's number one. People think that's what's going on. Number two, people think it actually won't matter even if they are bringing new people in to try to help, because so much damage has already been done, and the person that will replace her will very likely just continue what Kathy wanted, mainly like Rey movies and a focus on the sequel trilogy, right? So that is sort of the more pessimistic version of the fandom. And by the way, they might be right. I mean, if it's Carrie Beck, L. Big old fucking L. Probably Eckhart is right. It's literally just more corporate stoogey, corporate product bullshit. And there's very likely to be any real change at Lucasfilm. Okay? That's fair. However, if it's Jon and Dave, and if what Andrew is saying here, because look, you got to interpret this how you interpret it, right? Andrew's literally saying her replacement/replacements are exactly who you think they're going to be, by the way. To me, that's Jon and Dave. Like, if somebody that's an insider is speaking to other insiders and they say her replacements are exactly who you think they're going to be, that means Jon and Dave to me. Okay? And I gotta say, the Jon and Dave thing gets me optimistic, mostly because I've heard that both Jon and Dave have had disagreements with Kathy about how to be doing this. Now, Dave is much more of a company guy, and he's not really going to make waves. He's not really going to fight. But I've heard that Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy, dude, that beef is real. And they really have problems with each other. They're not necessarily going to put it on Front Street. They're not going to tell us. They're not going to, like, it's not like Jon's going to get on stage at Celebration and be like, you know what, I kind of think Kathleen Kennedy sucks. Nothing like that. But apparently there is some serious issue and some serious beef there. And I can't help but think that if Jon and Dave actually get to take this thing over, they could want to do things very differently from what Kathleen Kennedy was doing. Now, it's crazy because we've talked about this for years. As I've said at the top of this segment, bro, we've been talking about Kathleen Kennedy retiring for like literally 5 years. And we almost always go back to Jon and Dave, and we almost always have the same conversation. They're not technically qualified. Jon's a really creative guy, maybe good on some business stuff, but he's really an artist. He's an artist, and he understands technology and storytelling. That's his strong suit. Dave is basically just the biggest sweaty Star Wars nerd there ever was. The last connection we actually have to the teachings of the creator, George Lucas. And I think he tells some damn good Star Wars stories. I think he has a grasp of what Star Wars is in a way that a lot of other people do not over there. But together, that's kind of an interesting combination. It's essentially like the two nerdy guys that started a friendship actually made some cool shit together. Now all of a sudden they have the keys to the building. Now all of a sudden they have the big office in the upstairs room. Now all of a sudden they're the big bosses. And that is kind of an exciting prospect. I would actually love that, partially because they don't know what they're doing. And sometimes you need an outsider. Sometimes you need somebody that's come in, work fast, and break things. Because, yes, there's some business considerations, and maybe this person that invested this, that actually had this little thing that they wanted, this, that, second, and third, all that different stuff. But ultimately, if it comes down to those two guys in a room with a whiteboard, and they're like, what do we want to do with Star Wars? I 100% trust that whatever they come up with will be way better and way cooler than the current bullshit we are dealing with. So, I don't know. You know, for weeks and months, frankly, and maybe even for years, I have personally been conflicted about if it really even matters that Kathleen Kennedy goes. Because so much damage has been done. The brand is in the brand is in the shitter. Okay, it's real bad. So I have personally been conflicted on this. Like, does it even matter? Is it just too far gone? And then you think about Jon and Dave, and you're like, okay, would they even really shake things up? Would Dave just ride for whatever Kathy wanted? Maybe Disney is fine with it, you know? And like, I have those conflicting thoughts. But all of a sudden today, I'll be honest, when I first woke up and I saw this story, I began to get excited. I began to get optimistic. I began to think about, what could this look like if it were very different? What could this look like if ultimately what we are talking about is these two nerdy white dudes who fucking love Star Wars, that have been trying for years to elevate it and to fix it and to make it good, and now all of a sudden they might get the keys to the car, they might have full control. What does that look like? What does Star Wars look like if those two dudes are actually running the show? That is actually the most exciting question I've asked about Star Wars in years. It's legit. So I think it's real this time. I think it does matter. I think there is a path forward here, but it's really going to depend on who takes over. Is this a corporate stooge? Is this just some business person? Or is this Jon and Dave? And are we literally about to see Jon and Dave take over all of Star Wars and craft its future? Thanks for watching, and if you like this clip, smash a like on the actual video and subscribe to this channel. That way more of these clips get into your feed. I've also linked the full episode below if you want to check out the entire thing, including the Q&A we do with fans. You can also watch this show live. We do it live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can also find all of my content, including the videos I put on my main YouTube channel, on the podcast feed.